This is the Bathhouse for Windows PC, a horror game published by Chill as Art and released in August of 2024. And this appears to be the restored version. I guess it was an older game of some kind and was remastered or updated. In any case, we have another horror game experience that maybe was a little different than I was expecting to start. It isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I just kind of figured this game was going to be like those Backrooms games with a lot of maze-like rooms. There are a bunch of other games out there with the Bathhouse type of a setting. I kind of thought that's what I was getting here. Instead, we just have to survive 4 or 5 days, and during this time, this story unfolds. It doesn't feel like you personally unfold that story, so you're not really evolving with the story, or, I don't know, it kind of happens to you. You just go through the day and things happen. And that's okay, of course, but it just tends to lend itself to a game that has a low replay value for me, and feels a little repetitive. I got the first ending, which, honestly, it felt super obvious to me. There are other endings, but I just haven't gone back to check those out yet. In this game, you are a young lady who decides to take a job working in a bathhouse. My understanding is in Japan they have communal bathhouses, and they're basically local spas. It's a community thing. You've moved out to the countryside for a job in this tiny little town. You're given a small apartment, and you're there to work this bathhouse business. You get a list of rules posted on the wall, and you have to be familiar with those. And if somebody doesn't follow the rules, you can kick them out. It's kind of neat. The gameplay here is mostly you monitoring the counter. People are going to put money in front of you. You take it and ask them what they need. They're going to ask you for a mix of stuff. They're going to ask you for, I don't know, a towel, a razor, a shampoo, maybe body wash. You take the items from behind the counter one at a time, you place them on the counter, and then the customer takes them and they go in the bathhouse. That's kind of the main mechanic or handling of the game. You're going to click to pick up an item, you're going to move it, and drop it. I guess you could look at that as being a mini-game of sorts, I suppose. It's fine, but you're really just dragging and dropping stuff and watching it flop around. When the scarier parts of the game occur, you're going to use sort of the same basic mechanics. You're going to pick something up, usually, probably a brush or something, and you're going to probably have to clean something. That's kind of it. As you work the job, you're going to run into a bunch of people, and you also are going to run into what appear to be ghosts or spirits. They're going to be scary noises, and at one point, a bunch of monkeys. It's going to make sense in the game. They are basically spirits kicking around, causing grief of some kind. Your goal is to run the bathhouse and get through each day. And your boss is probably going to give you some sort of a basic assignment to do at the end of the day. Like, make sure to clean the walls today. But your first job is really to take care of anybody that comes into the bathhouse by giving them what they need and taking their money and making sure that their stay is okay. During the day, I found my routine was kind of helping out at the counter and then just walking around to check on water temperature. There's a 3-strike type of a meter at the top right of the screen, and it looks like you can get 3 strikes before you fail, and you seem to get fails by upsetting people, which you can do if the water temperature is too hot or cold. So I check the furnace frequently, and I've never once failed a day, so it's not hard. My general routine was to first check a person in, and as soon as everyone stopped coming in, I just run out back to check the water temperature. And then I'd walk through the bathhouse to see if there was anybody doing something weird that I should kick out. If someone were to show up at the register while I was gone, they'd just ring the bell and I'd be able to hear that and I'd run back up front. I do get to kick people out, which is nice. I kicked a few people out for breaking the rules, and I found myself frequently mopping the floors just to get the water off it. Once I found a kid hiding in a toilet. It was actually the first jump I had in the game. I opened a door and there was this noise and this kid came running out. So I guess that brings me to the scares of the game, or maybe the lack of scares. I jumped at the kid that was hiding, but not really at the spirits that were racing around. Truthfully, I kind of expected them to be there. I mean, it's fun to see them. It just didn't become much of a shock to me. By the time I get to the end, which is 4 or 5 days, I did think the story was just obvious, really. I mean, I wasn't upset by it, but I wasn't really moved by it either. I suppose, really, there was only one specific thing in this game that I had a little bit of trouble with. And if you've seen some of the other horror games that I reviewed, you probably know that I have problems when I see unrealistic construction in games. Yes, if you're having a nightmare or it's a fantasy, you're going to have to get a pass because rules don't apply. But if you're in a realistic setting, something that is supposed to be realistic, I'm going to expect structures to operate like real structures, and if something is off, I'm going to notice it, and it's going to bug me. It needs to make sense in the real world if you expect me to believe in it. Near the end of the game, you find this room, and you basically go down this concrete staircase. And that staircase was so deep, and it kept winding, and it kept going so deep below this small, dingy old bathhouse, I couldn't register how it could possibly have been built in the real world. You'd have to dig such a massive hole, hundreds of feet deep, and fill it in with millions upon millions of dollars of concrete for one tiny room at the bottom. My brain just won't agree with this. This would never have been built. It's too expensive, it's too wasteful, and it serves no logical purpose. On the other hand, if this was just a hole and this was dug by hand and it went down in this dirt-filled path to a hidden room, that would have something that totally makes sense to this game and to the real world and would totally work, but as it is now, all this concrete, it just doesn't make sense. Not to my brain, but I got through the game and I enjoyed the experience enough. The setting is small and there's not a ton to do because the focus of the game is just to get you through that story quickly. You're not upgrading a character, you're not really developing anything. It's just not that type of game. But then again, it's also not that expensive, and even though there's not a ton to do here, the graphics are solid, and strangely, I found myself kind of enjoying working the front counter of this little place. It got me wondering what it'd be like if you took out the horror timeline, or you just expanded it maybe, and they let you run the bathhouse a little bit for a while. It could be playing more like a modern lemonade stand type of game. I want to know how much money this place is making, and I want to figure out profit margins and all that stuff. I don't know, it's kind of weird, but it was what I was thinking about when I was playing this game. It only took a few hours for me to get through it, and I guess it felt about right for what it gives you. It's an interesting enough setting, and the mood feels good, so it's not bad. It's just not a ton of replay value for me at this point. Well, that's all I have for the Bathhouse for Windows PC. Thanks for stopping by to take a look, and I hope to catch you on another video.